Welcome back to the Keegan and Company podcast. For those who are new to the show, my name is Keegan Hipgrave. And guys, if you haven't already, could I get you to jump over, give us a little like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, whether it's Apple, YouTube, Spotify. It's a great way for us to grow the platform, grow the podcast, and just have some incredible conversations like I'm going to have today. In this episode, I'm joined by former NFL running back Johnathan Franklin. How are you, brother?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, bro.
Mate,
happy to be here, man.
Mate, I'm pumped. I'm so pumped to be here. We're here in LA.
Yes.
We're here in the LA Rams office.
There we go.
Mate, what a day.
Right.
How good. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great. It's a beautiful day. I'm on the podcast, excited to talk football and life, and yeah, it'll be a good time.
Mate, this is sick. I think there's so many layers to your story that I'm keen to unpick, and obviously professional sport is such a roller coaster, right? We see, and you would see it better than anyone, the highs and the lows and the transition, and I'm really pumped to be here, man. It's really cool to be over here from Australia. You'll be able to pick up the accent, and mate, if we abbreviate anything, just let us know. But mate, I think a fitting way, like a way that I kind of want to start this podcast off is like growing up in the Franklin household. Like you obviously grew up in LA. What did growing up look like?
So grew up in South Central LA, and at an early age, my mom put me into football. You know, I grew up in the inner city, and you know, many times football can be viewed as two different pathways. One, youth can look at it as the only way out the neighborhood. Two, individuals can play it as a hobby. For me, it was the first one, right? This was my way out the neighborhood, out the community. Grew up in an area where there's a lot of gangs, drugs. A lot of my friends growing up in high school, unfortunately, lives got taken at an early age. So playing football was just like, man, it was the way to inspire the community, inspire my family. Grew up in a single parent household. My dad was about 10, 15 minutes away, so still had a relationship with them. But my mom was making it happen, working 2 jobs, just doing what was necessary to keep food on the table. So playing football and grinding was a way to keep my family together, but also, man, let me make something out of my life too.
Man, I love that. I think that's so cool. But even like, I imagine it would be easy to take the other path, right? Like you said, a lot of your mates went down the other track. Yeah. How did you make that decision? Like, what was it that really drew you to football and was like, you know what, this is the path that I want to take?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I didn't really like football as much growing up. It was just something that my mom made me do. Yeah. I think when my sophomore year, I went to a school, Dorsey High School here in LA. I got invited to a camp. And leaving that camp, I received a scholarship to go to college. You know, no one in my family has ever attended college. And I knew from that moment, man, I can change the trajectory of what I've seen. I can create pathways of success where I didn't know that existed in the neighborhood. So I think that moment really clicked for me, like, wow, this can be something, right? Furthering my education, creating pathways, inspiring those that come from the area that I come from. And that's where I'm really locked in. Like, football is going to become something, and start seeing the power of the game starting from there.
But I imagine you still would have had a fair bit of talent growing up, right? Like you know, you said like football wasn't everything, but you still must have had a bit of talent coming through.
Yeah. I mean, you look at me now, you won't believe it. I played DN growing up, right? I was a chunky kid.
You're still looking good, brother. You're still looking good, man.
So it just kind of worked out. I mean, I had fun. I played well, you know, early on, but it was just something I just had to do to stay focused. You know, there's so many things to get caught up in. Within the inner city of LA. So it was just, I knew if I didn't play sports, if I didn't lock in, that I would end up on the path that I probably shouldn't have been on.
You said you got a full ride at college.
Yes.
How was that conversation with your mum? I imagine she would have been pretty proud of that.
She was crying, man. She was breaking down crying, especially my family, right? Telling them that I had, you know, a scholarship to continue my education, no chance. My mom could have provided financially, right? So at the high school, I didn't know what I was going to do, right? I didn't know what was possible. And that's what I love about the game, because it unlocks so many things beyond what you see on the field, right? And to go to that camp, to receive that scholarship from the greatest university in the world, which I believe UCLA, my mom was jazzed up and excited about it.
Was that a focus in high school? Because obviously, I know you're a pretty academic kid. You're on the academic honor roll. Like, was that a focus? Like, was that always the goal to get to college?
I mean, you talk about these things, right? But, you know, for me, I didn't know it was possible, right? I didn't know a kid like me could go to college. I didn't necessarily know the pathway, right? And my mom put me in different programs where, you know, I had great mentors or facilitators teach me, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. But it's like, no chance I'm going to be able to, you know, head to college or, you know, thrive there or have that opportunity. And to have football give me that stamp that it's possible, but also to your point, the academics, right? Really understanding like it's important to be more than just a student athlete.
Yeah.
Man, I started to believe like, man, I can start building a foundation.
I think that's a really interesting conversation, right? Because unless you see it, like unless you see other people like navigating the path, then you probably don't know it's possible, correct?
Yeah, and I had so many people see something in me that I didn't see in myself, you know? And sometimes you need that, right? You need individuals to come into your life and let you know that you can break the limits that you sometimes set on yourself, right? Or challenge the perspective that you sometimes grow up in, right? Or that you see around you. And I'm so grateful for my mom and individuals that kept pushing me beyond moments that I even wanted to go forward for me to be where I'm at today, right? Or be able to play the game of football on a high level where I didn't think it was potentially possible in the beginning.
Who were those individuals that really helped you out?
Yeah, you know, outside my mom, there's a gentleman named Martin Ludlow who was an incredible mentor of mine. And I think for me, he really challenged me to look beyond just the game of football, to really give my best every day. And another gentleman by the name of Russell Ellis, I think more so just from an aspect of just praying and being present, right, and surrendering, right, and just giving my best and taking one day at a time. I think those two really pushed me outside of my mom to know that I can be the best version of Johnathan, and I can go out and create that and discover that regardless of what I see around me.
Mate, that's so cool. I listened to a lot of the interviews that you've done post-footy, even during college. It's just like, it seemed like you have, like even now, like meeting you, you come in, like you say, it's like you've got a very positive, warm nature about you. Have you always had that? And where does that come from, man?
Yeah, I would say my faith, you know, would say I want to be engaging, right? I want to be kind. I represent something that's bigger than me, right, which is God. So I think I'm living for, you know, more than just Johnathan, you know. And I can look back on so many people who just was welcoming, right, accepting. And I know that how that made me feel, right? People always remember how you make them feel. We hear it time and time again. And it's an incredible thing to build those connections and just be genuine, authentic. But I think, again, like going back to my hero, my mom, and seeing those two individuals really teach me how to be a great person, teach me it's okay to be different. It's okay to be kind, right? It's okay to be genuine. It's okay to trust. I mean, those were things early on that was ingrained in me that necessarily looking around, people weren't doing on a daily basis.
But that stuff's contagious, yeah? Like, I think that the energy, it's kind of like a little energy that you're putting out. Like, when you push that onto someone, or even just like open it up to someone, that's reciprocated back. And then, like you said, it's like, they won't forget like what you say, but like you'll never forget how someone made you feel. And so when you leave here, you might come back in 5-10 years later, 5-10 years time, it's like, that guy was it. You know what I mean? Even going back to college. Like, I imagine there's probably a heap of college mates that have that same sort of feeling about you, man. So it's cool. Mate, going into UCLA, was that the only university that I guess like were open to having you, or how does that look? Because I'm trying to understand the landscape of college over here.
Yeah. So my top three colleges I want to go to, that I got recruited for and offered was UCLA, Cal, and Stanford. So those were the top three schools that I wanted to go to. What led me to choose UCLA was there was guys within Los Angeles that I played against or played with, and UCLA offered them as well. And I remember we were in the meeting room with the old coach, Rick Neuheisel, and they had just let the previous coach go, and he was giving the speech of his life to us. And he goes out the room. I remember a guy, Dayton Jones, Raheem Moore. Dayton played for the Packers, Raheem for the Broncos. And after Rick Neuheisel left, they was like, hey, man, let's do this. Let's turn UCLA around. And, like, we made an agreement, made the pact that we're going to commit to UCLA, and, you know, it was history ever since.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really special, man, to do it with guys that you grew up watching and cheering on in the neighborhood.
What was it like going to a college system? Because it's like it's a new thing for me, man. It's a cool thing to, I guess you see the movies, right? And you hear all the hype back in Australia, and it's cool to see. What was it like coming in as a freshman, right? Like your first year. I remember like when I came into professional sport, I think it was like 17, 18. We do it a bit younger. We don't do the college thing. We sort of might get drafted like into the professional system at a younger age, but you might not play till you're a bit older. I remember going in and I was so nervous. You know, like these are guys who I looked up to, right, since I was a 10-year-old, and they're captains. You know, they're the guys who I kind of wanted to be like. But right, I remember first year I probably didn't say anything because I was so nervous. Absolutely. How did you go coming in as a freshman?
Very similarly. Yeah, I was so nervous, right? Because, I mean, going to UCLA and being exposed to different cultures, ethnicities, from the academic side, it's at a faster pace than high school was, and then you're on your own, right? There's no parents to like hold you accountable, make sure you're handling, what you need to do. So when it comes to just prioritizing life, you just got to figure out, and there's no playbook, right? So I agree, I was overwhelmed. It was intimidating. Like, how do I make friends? How do I figure life out? Like, what do I say yes to, no to? So it was an interesting moment, right, of just discovering, Johnathan and stepping my foot into college and then football as well, right? Growing up playing football in high school, I mean, you're the best of the best, right? It's not a lot of talented kids, right, in high school, but when you go to college, everybody's good. So you get to this place for me, like, man, I'm comparing myself to this person and that person. He's fast, he's strong, he has skills, he's better than me. So even like the mental side of the game was the first time where I really had to navigate those thoughts where I didn't have in high school. So there was just so many things that was going on in my mind of like figuring out, man, am I good enough? Do I belong here? How do I overcome this? How do I compete against this person, right? So it was an incredible time, right? Because those moments of uncomfortability I appreciate because I had to learn how to be comfortable in those moments of uncomfort. But it was tough in the beginning, right, to keep going.
What do you think was the biggest learning you got out of college in that time?
Yeah, I would say just putting my best foot forward, and controlling the controllables. As I look back, all I could do was control the controllables. I got to UCLA. They recruited me as an athlete, but they moved me to defense. And then I redshirted. They ended up moving me to running back. It was 6 guys on the depth chart. I remember getting like one rep a day in practice. And it's like a whole practice going on. I don't really get in. So even being able to, like, when I have that 1 rep, give your best. The next day, 1 rep, give your best. And over time, I went to 7 to the starter. I lost my job, had to win it back. But I just had to be in the moment, right? Through the trials, the roller coaster of it. I just had to continuously figure out what does my best look like in this season, in this moment. And everything worked out.
But that's so cool. Yeah, I love the setback, but then overcoming piece. You said you lost your job. You said you lost it and then came back. What happened?
Yeah. So my freshman year, again, I competed, was able to be the starting running back, and then my sophomore year, this guy just beat me out, right? His name was Derek Coleman. He played for the Seahawks for some time. He was about 6'2", 240. And I wasn't defensive lineman size, right, when I got to college, right?
I got to see some photos here, man. We're going to get some
things have changed, man, for sure. I lost, But, he beat me out. So, like, to be the guy as a freshman, then to go in the following year to lose your job and be like, dang, am I going to play again? Am I still good enough? Can I do this? Can I turn this around? And then to compete to win it over. I mean, I think it was those moments that I always appreciate in life because, like, man, when you competing, when you're working hard, like, you're discovering so much about yourself and the environment. But yeah, the guy, he got me, right? I can't even sugarcoat, make no excuses. He just beat me out.
Mate, that's sport, man, right? And I love the learning. And mate, hindsight's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Like you can look back and look at those times as sometimes negative, but like the learnings, mate, the learnings from it, and probably what you took into the NFL, right? Like how was the college experience for you overall? Like on a success-wise, like did you guys have like positive success on the field in college?
Yeah, I mean, it went up and down. I think early on, we started winning 4, 5 games. We were like 4-8, 6-8. Toward the back end, we were able to win 9 games. I think the season after I left, they won 10 games, which is pretty well in college football. So we had some great success toward the back end. I was blessed to leave UCLA breaking 4 records, right? Still holding them all today. So I think even like looking back on the journey when things didn't like turn out the way that I wanted to, but at the end, like it was the results that I wanted. Again, it shows just the power of just giving your best, right? And that end result, if you be consistent, if you persevere, things always work out. So it was.
I knew you were going to be humble, mate. I know you were going to be very humble. You said you broke 4 records.
Yeah.
What are the records?
Yeah, so one is a single-season rushing record, all-purpose single-season rushing record, the most yards in a career at UCLA and most all-purpose yards in a career at UCLA. So to be able to lose my job, not play, and then I know my junior year just kind of focus on things off the field that distracted me, but my senior year really locking in and have some success toward the end. I mean, it was a dream come true, right? Come from the inner city, you're questioning if you're enough, questioning if you belong. You're looking at other people and you're comparing yourself and you're losing the hope and the confidence. But to be able to like persevere and like, wow, break these records, I mean, it was an incredible moment, right? I'm so grateful to be able to like end the story the way that I did at UCLA.
Mate, that's a beautiful story, man. That's a beautiful piece. I'd love to help you to help me understand the path to the NFL, right? Because obviously, you do high school, you go to college, and then I know the NFL draft is a big thing over here, right? How does that look? Like, how does that story play out when you had a lot of success in your senior year, going into the NFL draft? How did that look?
Yeah, so it was interesting, right? Again, like you figure out life without the playbook. So senior year comes, and then of course you have agents that they talk to me at the appropriate time. So I don't want to throw UCLA under the bus. After I was done playing, start to have those meetings, and then you figure out the agent. From there, you have a set of different bowl games, right? So I was invited to play at the Senior Bowl. So that's in Mobile, Alabama. Go to the Senior Bowl. Then you have the NFL Combine. Was blessed to be invited to the Combine. Then from there, you prepare for the draft. So there's different training facilities that you have an opportunity to go out and train at, right? From a weightlifting, from you training for the 40-yard dash if necessary, heading into the Combine. And then after that, just the path to the draft, you get ready. So teams are able to fly you out for visits. Our teams are able to fly out to where you're at to put you through workouts. Gotcha. So I was able to visit some teams. I actually did a visit to St. Louis Rams.
No way.
Yeah, I met with the Rams.
Yeah.
Coming out of UCLA, which is crazy.
Couldn't get it over the line, right?
And then leading up to the draft, you have your pro day, right? So you kind of do a workout for the day for different teams, and you just kind of wait for draft day from there.
And obviously, all the teams will have a really good understanding of, they probably obviously watched all the college games.
Yeah.
They're getting a good idea of where you're at physically in these testing.
Oh.
That's what it looks like, right?
It's no joke. Yeah, you go through all these testing, especially for the Combine, because you meet with different teams too, and they know everything about your life, from middle school, from high school, college. They know about your family. They want to know how your character is, mistakes that you made. They put up film that you have to break down. Why did you go make this decision versus this one? Break down the defense. So it's like very intense when you're meeting with like 10, 15 people in a room, and they're like just drilling you with different questions. So like it's a really interesting moment, right, going through the process and that path to the draft, but it's so much fun. But beyond just the on-field activities, like you got to be ready for the mental side of the game, but also those interviews that you do with the different teams that want to meet you.
Run me through the interviews, the offside stuff. You said it can be like challenging mentally. How so?
Yeah, I think one, you want to present your best self, right? And be able to justify, because like they want to poke holes, right? Find what are the gaps, right? What are the flaws in, who you are, because they're investing X amount of dollars, right? Because there could be some liability. So being willing to be honest, to be real, to answer those tough questions. You have to take different tests to really figure out where your IQ is. And be able to break things down. I mean, it can be mentally and physically exhausting preparing for the draft, because many times all we see is, this player, he ends his college career and he's drafted, but we don't know what happens in between or why this team selected them. But there's such a assessment, right, beyond just on the field, that teams make sure happens to make sure they're making the right decision.
Do you get nervous at all in these moments?
For sure. I mean, this is your career is on the line, like nothing's guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. You graduate from college and it's like, oh my gosh, what's next?
Right.
I mean, so many people, right? They train, they get ready for the draft, and their name's not called, right? Then they train again the next year, get ready for the draft, their name's not called, and it's like that cycle. So you just don't know what's going to happen. So absolutely, I was nervous. You don't know where you're going to get selected, what team, when it's going to happen, will you play football again? And you fall in love with this game, and it's like no other moments that you'll be able to play it again.
Mate, run me through the night. Run me through the draft night, because you hear the stories of like, families are together, they're sitting there waiting for the call.
Man.
What did your night look like?
So I got an embarrassing one, and I'll give you.
You can go, mate. We can go both.
Yeah, we get a little vulnerable. So my agent was awesome. I appreciate him, but there was insight like, hey, you're going to get drafted in the second round. I guess that teams was giving him. So during this time, there was a small documentary that UCLA was doing about my life, right? So they was following me around. So you have the first round on Thursday, and you have the second and third on Friday. So I'm like, man, I'm about to get drafted on Friday. So we invite the camera crew to my mom's house, invite all my family and friends. I'm like, hey, this is the day I'm getting drafted. Didn't get drafted, bro.
Wow, man.
Though, yeah, crushing moment, man. So like people there, hey, bro, you okay? I'm sorry. So that happens. Saturday comes, I don't want nobody, right? It's just me, moms. But eventually, Green Bay gives me a call early that morning in the 4th round. They select me, and I end up crying. It was the greatest feeling in the world in the midst of everything that happened the night before. Probably should have stayed humbled. But yeah, life goes on. I'm happy they made that call.
Mate, that's gotta be a really cool feeling, man. Like, not just the night. Like, the night would be amazing, but it's not just the night. It's like all the years of hard work.
Gosh,
the grind in college, in high school, and like that's a big thing.
For sure.
That's a huge thing, man.
Yeah.
I remember like even. It's a big thing. We call it like making your debut. Like back home in Australia, like you make your NRL debut, which NRL is the National Rugby League, so it's one of our big sports back home in Australia. And when you make your that first game, incredible. Like, you got your family come and watch you, and that feeling is it's hard to describe for people who haven't done it. And I think it's cool to hear you say it, because you can obviously hear the passion in your voice, man, because it's such a cool thing. I'd love to zoom in on Green Bay and how you came into the Packers. I think that's a pretty cool thing to come into a professional system. Was it similar to the college system where, again, you're kind of like big fish, small pond, and going into that space? How did that look coming in?
Yeah, it was interesting because that year the Packers in the 2nd round, they drafted running back Eddie Lacy out of Alabama, who was a beast. He was a dog. So the plan was for us to come in and, really take, hopefully the team to the next level. But to get to the professional world, playing for the Green Bay Packers, and you talk about the best of the best. I mean, there's no one greater, right? You're on the highest stage of the world. And when you talk about competition, and with UCLA, hey, you have a bad day. Hey, regardless, I know I'm still going to be in school, right? I got 4 years guaranteed. Green Bay Packers, you have a bad day, you can get fired the next day.
Oh, really? They can cut you straight out?
Oh, absolutely. So, like, as a rookie, right, when things aren't guaranteed, I mean, the pressure of the moments of not knowing if you're going to be there the next week, the next month, the next year, I mean, every moment counts, especially as a young rookie where you're fighting to make the team, right? It wasn't a guarantee when I got drafted that I was going to be on the team in the season, right? No one says you have a spot. So, like, I'm competing to make that 53-man roster, although I got drafted that year. So
Gotcha.
It's a real moment. I mean, you see it all the time, like 4th round, 5th round, 3rd round. I mean, guys are let go. They don't always, it's not a guarantee you're going to make the team based off where you're getting selected. So it's a high pressure moment. I mean, forget the players. It's like, man, my livelihood is on the line.
So what were your expectations? Did you go in as a mind frame of, like I'm going in there to play? How was your mind frame in there?
Yeah, I think I wish what I wish when, many times when I look back, I wish I would have reached out to more of the relationship I had early on, just from a mentor standpoint. I think mentally it was challenging to navigate from the financial piece, from how to approach a practice, how to manage the new people that are showing up and popping up, and then there's different deals. You have a marketing agent. So there's a lot happen at a short period of time. And simultaneously, you're trying to earn this job, So I think there were some good days, but early on, like, it was a challenge for me, right? Yeah. It was hard to come out, compete, and then manage life and kind of be on your own, in that sense, so many miles away from everyone who was close to me.
The expectations, I think, is a cool thing to pick apart. Like, I remember when I came into professional football, I had this thought where it was like a little bit of arrogance, I think, and probably a lot of ego, which obviously, again, we said, hindsight's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Like, you can look back, and if I change it, maybe I would change it, I'm not sure. But I went in and just, like, I genuinely thought I was going to play. Yeah. Like that, you thought that's my spot, and almost probably trying to prove to your role models and people who are in the team that you are good enough and you are capable. But I felt like I was in a rush. I felt like I was rushing that, and that obviously led to injuries. That led to a whole bunch of things, maybe overtraining. I'm not too sure. When you came in, you obviously were trying to prove to other people that you were capable, and you even said you're probably trying to prove to yourself. And I guess the angle I'm going at is it's probably like a lot of the young kids who like listen to this podcast, especially teenagers, and they might be in a bit of a rush to get where they want to go. Any advice? Any feedback? Like, if for your younger self, like looking back, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, looking back, I think for me, I would just tell myself just to be present.
Yeah.
And enjoy the moment, and every moment has purpose. right? I think so many times when I try to force things, I thought it was my only opportunity, or to your point, I had to rush it, where I should have invested in just preparing more or developing in other areas, right? Or getting the feedback that I needed to be the best version of me. But I think, yeah, for the young people, just live in the moment, right? Trust the journey, trust the hurdles that you face, and always learn from them, right? I think what I did at times is at the professional realm, allowed the bad days to identify who I was, right? It was so connected to my identity that I can lose perspective that, wow, like I'm still good in the midst of this bad day that just happened. You know, so I think being able to separate the two, learn from the moments, but don't like lose sight of who you are, is something I wish I would have taken advantage of during my playing time with the Packers.
Mate, that conversation, the identity piece, is probably something that we have most on this podcast, especially with boys and girls who are in that professional space. Like the ability to be able to separate their identity, it's a hard thing, man, and it probably, you don't get to see it a lot until you move out of it, until you leave professional sport. Mate, you got drafted, you got to play in the NFL, which is incredible. But our stories are very similar in the sense where we're both medically retired from the game. I'd love to get a bit of an understanding of what actually happened, and then following on from that, what it looked like transitioning out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'm kind of going to set it up, okay, if that's cool, if we got
100%.
time. So it's really interesting, right, just kind of the path. Because remember, week 3, Eddie Lacy, who the running back was drafted, he was out this week. James Starks went in, and he's the starting running back that game. The second to last play, he's hurt. He's out. So I go in second half, and I'm able to run 100 yards, score a touchdown. And I'm like, wow, this is my moment. At the end, I fumble. We end up losing the game. The following week, we played the Detroit Lions, play a couple of plays, fumble again. So I'm benched. So I get an opportunity, week 12, Minnesota Vikings. I'm like, man, this is my moment to prove myself, right? I've been benched, lost some games. Like, I have to do this. First play of the game, first quarter, playing for playoffs, Lambeau Field. I'm back at kick return, starting off the game. Remember, the ball is kicked. I catch it, run to the 5, to the 10. I get hit on the crown of my helmet, fumble, the ball comes out. So remember looking at the ball, knowing I need to pick it up, right? And as I attempt to move to pick up the ball, I realized I'm completely paralyzed from my neck down. Couldn't move an inch. So I'm laying there thinking, what's next? How did I get there? I mean, so many thoughts that you could imagine is going on in my mind. After a few moments goes by, I get a tingly feeling from my fingers and my shoulders, and I'm slowly able to get up. And I was imagining a doctor sent me into the locker room. But as I'm walking to the locker room, little did I know that would be my last time ever playing in the NFL. What concurred was I had a spinal contusion in my C1 zone. Eventually, the doctor said if I would ever get hit again, I'll be paralyzed for the rest of my life.
Wow.
So it was a crushing moment, right? Especially when the news came to me. We didn't know initially that I was going to retire when that game ended. I was going to miss the following game. Then after that, got an MRI, saw a spot on my spine. It was like, hey, let's go in injury reserve. But when the season ended, they said, hey, go home, train. So I went home to train to get ready for the following year. I felt good. And then when we came back for OTAs, they was like, hey, let's go get an MRI. The spot on my spine was still there. I went to go get opinion in Chicago, New York, and that was the first time I heard, hey, we won't be able to clear you to play football again because of you. Can be paralyzed for the rest of your life if you get hit. I remember the last day of OTAs, the doctors called me in and let me know, like, hey, we have to release you, and you'll have to medically retire. So it was crushing, right? Especially given the moments I had, right, in the league, the games where, fumbling the ball, losing the games, and like the first game back, this was my opportunity to prove to so many people, even myself, like, hey, like, I belong here. And then to be paralyzed and not have that moment to ever make up for that, right? Not to be able to prove. You got to find a way to accept those realities, which is painful. Like for me, it was depression. For me, like it was an identity crisis because from 10 years old, I would say when I started playing football to like 22, 23, I was the guy who gave everyone hope from playing football, the guy in the community who's going to make it, the guy who's going to bring joy to the family. And now this platform that you've been using to give is gone. What is my worth? What is my value? How can I give? Where does my confidence come from? So it was a complete shake of my life and everything about it. The friendships, And I would say maybe like 2 years, 2 complete years, it took for me to just come to a place of peace and accept the reality of, Johnathan, you can never play football again. Johnathan, you're more than just an athlete. Johnathan, you have to figure out life after football. But it was a depressing time, you know, to find the worth and find the value and to let go of football and be okay with that.
Mate, I've got so many questions.
Yeah,
Like,
ask
mate, I've got, because I obviously resemble with it. Like I've been there, man. It's a hard conversation to have with the doctors and everything. Take me, I think the first time, how old are you when you were medically retired?
I was 22.
22.
Yeah.
It's a hard conversation, obviously, to have with the doctor. Did you ever think about pushing back and being like, no, I can change the odds, or I feel okay, I feel like I can still train? Like, you went home to train. Any thoughts about pushing back?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I had so many conversations with the doctor, right, or clinging for hope, you know, or trying to find hope, right? And I think even when the proposal of surgery to go in, the risk was higher than the success rate. So there was a lot of frustrating moments, right? But I think I had to just have some people sit down and have a real conversation with me at the moment. I didn't like it. I didn't appreciate it. I didn't think they were on my side, but I had to see things beyond just this moment, right? Given the potential risk of surgery. Essentially, they wanted to do a fusion on my neck. So yeah, I pushed back a lot with many different people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's it's I get it. Yeah, I get it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I can feel the pain, obviously. When you said you talked about being in a depressed state after leaving the game. What did that look like? Because I want to circle back on how we get out of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
On how we get out of that mental state.
Yeah.
What did it look like when you first finished up and you had the conversations with the doctors and you said it was a hard time?
Yeah.
What did that actually look like?
Yeah, it was, you know, it was tough, and it took me a while for it to hit. And I remember when it first hit me, because when they told me the news, I was going back home to a friend's graduation, and then my brother and his friend was going to fly back with me to Green Bay to spend 2 weeks with me. So I'm like, man, I can't share, you know, this with my friend. And then my little brother, like, he looks up to me like, how can I tell him this hero could not play football anymore? So we fly back to Green Bay, and I don't say anything to anyone. And I think maybe it was like a week and a half into the trip, and I posted on Twitter first, and then I just start crying, right? And I think that was the moment where it started to hit, like, wow, this is real. And I think, like, I was going, rather than going to my mentor, right? Rather than praying, rather than going back to the things that has worked, I went to other things, right? To fill me up, or to distract me, or to ease the pain, but it was just a temporary moment of easing.
What were those things?
If it was drugs, if it was partying, if it was alcohol, right? If it was hanging out with certain crowds that I shouldn't, right? So many times you want to fill the void, as I thought, or man, if I do these things, it will go away. If I do these things, then I'll feel good. If I do these things, then man, life will work out. I will be happy again. But it just came and going, right? So I think I was making decisions that were bigger risk, right? Because I just didn't want to feel the depression. I didn't want to feel the pain. I didn't want to feel the sadness. I didn't want to feel the loneliness. I didn't want to feel in my mind what I thought, that I can't be this hero again to the people that matter the most to me. I can't give anymore. So let me find something where I feel that I'm enough, right? So I was running to all these things, and I was running away from the truth.
What did was there a moment where you thought, I can't keep doing this? And because you said that it was around like that 2-year mark of doing different things. Was there a moment, and there might not be, but was there a moment that was like switched, and we're like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I've got so much more potential to give.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was a few for sure. I think one of my good friends just had a conversation with me in regards to where I'm at with my faith. And what I'm doing doesn't align with that. So there was some hypocrisy that I think I had to see, right? I can't say I believe in one thing but live a completely different way. So I had to have a real conversation there. But I think simultaneously, I was working at the University of Notre Dame at the time, and my boss called me in, And essentially, they were going to fire me, bro.
Gotcha,
he was like,
really?
hey, like, what's going on?
They weren't stuffing
right?
around.
Yeah. He really had to check in. I was like, hey, this is just where I'm at. This is what I feel. This is what I'm going through. And that's where he suggested to go see a therapist. So I signed up, and I'm grateful for the benefits of the NFL. They were able to take care of a few sessions. And that was the first time I just started to talk about these things. Because even for me, like growing up, the perception of vulnerability was not a strength, right? I'm not going to tell you how I feel because I'm weak or I lose my value, I lose the respect. But it really changed my perspective that, man, I need to be vulnerable. I need to express how I feel. I need to cry.
Did you get a lot out of the first session? Because I don't know a lot of mates who will go to therapy or go to see psychologists, but they won't resonate with that psych, and they're like, oh, well, psych, like it's not for me,
for
right?
sure.
And like I say, mate, try a bunch of different things. It's like dating, right? Like you might not find the first girl straight away. You might as well, happened to me, which is great. But like, did you resonate with this first person that you spoke to?
Not initially, right? I think the power in it for me was sharing.
Yeah.
For the first time, like taking the mask off, taking the walls down, and this is who I am, and this is where I'm at, and I'm not afraid of the consequences or how you're going to react to that. That was such a new thing to me, because for so long, it's so easy, or from growing up for me, to put on the mask that you have everything together, right? That you're not struggling, or you don't have any issues, or life is perfect. But to find the comfort in the boldness to take the mask off and share, like, hey, this is me. Man, that was refreshing, right? So I think I went to maybe 2-3 sessions after that. And I figured, like, man, I just need to embrace this aspect of vulnerability and accept where I'm at. But to be able to share and talk and to maybe listen to a response right, without the criticality and the judgments, I appreciated that about it.
That was 2013?
Yeah, 2013.
What was the landscape like back then in the mental health space? I can't imagine like talking about things is probably a very common thing back then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was as prevalent as it is today, right? I don't think people really talked about mental health then. So it was new, right? To even understand this aspect of mental health and mental wellness, or you need to take care of yourself mentally. All right, or emotionally. I mean, those things were not talked about maybe a couple of years ago, right? Like how important it is to like take care of you before everything else. So I was still navigating that space where I think not understanding what are the resources. And especially it's so interesting because the more I talk to players and even hearing you share your stories, like so unique because like it's a consistent thing, right? When you're done playing the game, regardless of how much success or not, like guys or women as well, like they go through that identity crisis. Who am I outside of the game? So even being able to have those conversations was really interesting, but also refreshing. Like, man, I'm not the only one too, right? Because many times when you go through life, you're like, man, I'm the only one who goes through this. I'm the only one dealing with this pain, right? And you can kind of victimize yourself, right? And then isolate even more. But to hear someone relate, connect, meet me where I'm at, right? And like I can see them where they're at. I think it was a powerful thing to start having those conversations with peers as well.
And I think that's why these conversations are so important, and even the conversations that you're probably having with guys who will be coming out of professional sport, in the NFL. Like I think that's a huge piece of the conversation, right? And when you're, being able to be so open and vulnerable about your experiences, that's it. When crew are like, oh, I get it. Like, Jonathan's been through it. Like I've got a path that I can sort of follow. We talked about that before, that path out. We spoke about the identity piece, and you got back in touch with your faith. You started talking about it. I love that piece, man. I think that's really cool. How did you find your purpose outside? Because I want to get into what you're doing in the community with the Rams, because I see you, man. You light up, man. It's really I love that, man. I think that's so cool. How do you find that? Because I imagine there's a lot of guys who might not be medically retired, who might just be leaving the game because they're retiring, they might be getting a bit old, they might got a contract, might be transitioning out of the game. How did you find your piece?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So when I was at the University of Notre Dame, and just kind of catch up to speed, when I left the Packers, had opportunity to work back with the Packers, and then moved on to the University of Notre Dame. And we had a program called the Rosenthal Leadership Academy. Essentially, we brought all the captains together from all different teams, and we led them through a leadership curriculum. For this particular day, we only had the football team. And we were doing this program called mapping, right? And me and my colleagues was facilitating it. But essentially, you had to write the 5 most important things to your life, what they were, and why they're important. 3 different reasons. And I wrote faith and football and, family. And it's so interesting because, like, the reason why, the common thing was community. I love bringing people together. Yeah. Love giving people hope, inspiring. I love the autonomy to think and get creative. And I was like, wow, like, the community has always been a part of, like, my DNA, although it wasn't, like, officially my job title. And I think from that moment, I realized, wow, this is what makes me tick. Yeah. This is what, like, my entire life I've been doing kind of for free, right? Essentially, like, this has been my why. Yeah. So I think at leaving that session, although we were supposed to do it for the team, like, for me, I'm like, wow, that really hit home. Yeah. This is my why. This gets me excited. Like, this lights me up. Like, I want to inspire people, give them hope, right? Bring community members together, right? Allow them to dream beyond their current reality. So I think from there, it's like, wow, let's figure this thing out now.
It's fun, mate. I love the similarities in these stories, bro. I think it's so funny. It's so wild because you're on 2 different ends of the world, right? America and Australia, and it's cool. I resonate. Like, I subscribe to what you're saying 100%. Look at a lot of guys, like myself personally. I had an idea that. I loved the idea of mental health. I love, like, helping mates, especially coming into a professional system. When I came in, it wasn't like not many crew talking about what was going on, and I had lots of mates to suicide that I didn't want that to happen again, So I wanted to be that guy that mates could talk to, and so that was always like an underlying theme. But then, I had academic parents that wanted me to do academics, and so I'm constantly thinking about what life after football is going to be. Yeah. And so I was constantly thinking about it, and I got medically retired at 24. And so I got to play a fair few games in the NRL, which was fun. But it wasn't until I finished up where I was just like, oh, what am I going to do? I went through the same things as all the same thoughts, and I imagine probably similar experience to what you went through. And then it wasn't until one day where I was thinking, like, what do I want to be doing for the next 10 years, right? 20 years. And then I constantly thought, like, how athletes, that were so influential to us growing up. And all the same things that you were saying is just like, what do I want to do? And community was a huge part of it. Mental health was a huge part of it. I've been doing stuff with November for ages. And I was like, well, what does that look practically? So this podcast started coming about over a year ago, and then I'm studying psychology at the moment. And it was what I'm getting to, and we help, like, past players who are transitioning out of the game back in the NRL. It's another story for another day. Anyway, these 3 things that I love, they were sort of like always underlying throughout my career. And then it wasn't until I was just like, it was like a light bulb moment. And then I can certainly see what you were saying with that light bulb moment where community was such a great piece of the puzzle. And it's kind of like, it's always been there. It's always been there. It's it relates to your values and who you are. And when I have conversations with guys and girls who are transitioning out of professional sport, that's what I tell them. I was like, there's usually going to be something that's been underlying, but also figure out what you don't want to do, because figuring out what you don't want to do is just as important as figuring out what you want to do. That's good. I deterred. That's all right.
Yeah, thanks
but man, I'd love to. You say community is such a huge part in what you're doing now. Yeah. What does that look like practically? Because I've seen videos of you knocking around with the kids, and they're all looking up to you, man. It's a cool thing. What does that look like? You with the Rams at the moment? How does that look?
Yeah, so I'm with the Rams, heading into my 9th season as our senior director of social justice and football development. And community, social justice is in the Rams' DNA, and it starts with access and opportunity, right? We want to make sure, regardless of what zip code someone grows up in, they have access to the opportunities needed, right, to thrive, essentially. So it's coming based off, like, developing our strategies based off the issues of the community. Like, that's our why, right? It starts there, to be authentic and genuine. So you think about, if it's from the community perspective, from food insecurity, community police relations, education inequities, homelessness, mentorship, workforce development, diversifying that pipeline. Like, it's all about, community first. And then secondly, growing the game of football, right? So how can we provide the equipment, everything necessary to grow the game, but also what's the resources to sustain it? And not just, creating flag football leagues, but, like, when it comes to coaching education, when it comes to mental wellness for coaches, if you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of one of your players, right? Or how do you know what to identify? And then secondly, now we're expanding to the parents, right? How can we create that culture that's necessary
How do
help grow them.
you do that with the parents? That's probably a huge piece, right? Right? Like, what do you do with the?
So
with
we're
the
just tapping into it, but we have parent seminars, right? Parent clinics where we bring in some of our partners to talk about creating good culture, right? Or how to support your child, right? After a game, after a practice. As you know, playing the game, like there's a lot that you deal with your identity, with how you play, with if you perform, if you even get in or not, and how do you navigate that space? And as a parent who, some parents may have never played, how can they really support their child, right? So we want to make sure that we focus on the parents to give them the resources necessary because we want to sustain the game of football. But if you're just providing the equipment but not the resources to the athletes, to the parents and the coaches, the game's not going to grow the way that we want. But also, when individuals stop playing the game, they're in a better position from when they started. You know, so being intentional in regards to what we're putting into the community as well, like gets me excited. So we're growing, sustaining and developing fans through football as well.
Man, I love this, bro. This is so cool. You can hear the energy, right?
Oh, it's fun, man.
And
You gotta love it.
You've been doing it for 9 years, mate. That's so cool. What are you doing with the kids? Like you said, will you do the clinics with the kids as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have flag football leagues, you know, all throughout LA. So I remember when we first started our flag football league, we probably had 300 kids. Now we're surpassing 12,000, and that's from San Diego. I know you're from Australia. You're like, where the heck is that?
But no, man, we did San Diego.
Okay, cool.
We went down
Cool.
Oceanside. We're starting to get it.
Yeah. So from SD, from LA, up north, I mean, we want to create access and opportunity to flag football. We're able to partner with different groups to sanction girls flag throughout the state of California, growing the game. And then from a high school football, we're able to like visit high school games every Friday and activate and really bring kind of like a SoFi Stadium experience to the high school games and engage with different communities. And I mean, it's so much fun, right? Like being able to grow the game. We were able to do an international camp not too long ago. We did like a friendship bowl where a team from Mexico was able to travel to Los Angeles and play local Los Angeles teams. So even be able to build that bridge with communities outside of the U.S., right? To grow the game, sustain it, to unite communities. Yeah. I mean, it just really shows the power of football.
Well, man, I'd love to have you and the Rams over in Australia one day.
Let's do it.
Bro, mate, that would be,
hey,
mate.
I ain't going to turn down a good time now, all right?
Mate, I could see you on the Gold Coast, up laying on the beach. We'll get you on a surfboard. We'll get
whatever you need, sign me up.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think that's a cool piece, man. I think that's a very cool piece. Mate, obviously, like you've been in this role for 9 years now. It's a very cool thing. Has there been any standout, I guess, like stories, or is there any like kids that have really stood out to you over those couple years? Yeah,
for sure. I would say one of our former like Rams youth hosts, right? Her name's McKenna. She was just featured on the NFL kickoff commercial. She's won a gold medal on the USA national team. She's a local high school student in Orange County, and just to see like her be able to take off with the girls flag football being sanctioned and the opportunities that she has now on a national stage. We had a handoff moment for the Paris to the LA 28 Olympics, and she was a part of that during one of our preseason games. And just to see those opportunities for her to thrive on the field, but also the opportunity that's created off the field. I mean, that's the power of the game, but it didn't exist a few years ago, right? And to see a young star like her kind of thrive and grow and set up some career opportunities when she's done playing girls flag. I think that's really cool, right? And even, we've had, individuals create or receive scholarships, right? From girls flag or in high school coming from the underserved community that we've been able to support and put in a good position. I love seeing that, right? Those success stories, right? Or those moments where you're able to overcome the barriers that's in front of you.
Mate, well, I'd love to have a little look at what the female space looks like over here, because in Australia it's growing, right? Girls are, they're diving into their own personal brand. They're moving from a semi-professional system to almost a professional system, and I think we all understand that takes time. But the quality of football for girls over in Australia, it's increasing heavily because we're investing in grassroots. What does the female space look like over here? Because you're obviously talking about investing in grassroots. Like, is there a pathway for girls to play professionally or make a living out of football?
Yeah, I mean, we're pushing. Yeah. I know there are some potential opportunities to sanction it as an NCAA sport. You have the LA 28 Olympics coming. That's inclusive of boys and girls flag football. Cool. So, and hopefully the LA 32 would include flag football, but we're pushing for that too ahead of the game. But I think right now, like, how can we get, some of these girls to the Olympics, and even as there's so many transferable life skills from playing a game of football, even if you don't create a career professionally in it. And I think what we're even trying to focus on, like, there are more pathways that exist outside of football, right? Play the game, fall in love with the game, but allow the game to elevate you to the best version of yourself. But don't allow it to be an end-all, be-all. This is not your only pathway towards success, right? Enjoy it, take as much as you can with it, but allow it to propel you. So I think we're trying to challenge the perspective of what football has been, but making sure everyone stays a Rams fan during their own career journey.
Well, mate, I think I'm definitely a Rams fan now, brother. We went to SoFi Stadium just before coming.
Beautiful.
Mate, it's insane.
Come on.
We got the whole tour, saw the locker room, mate. It was really cool. So I think I'm a Rams fan
I love
now.
that, man.
Mate, I've loved this conversation, man.
Oh,
I think
appreciate you, man.
I think this has been cool. Like, the ability to be present. I love the fact that you just be so open and vulnerable about your own experiences, man. I think I know I've definitely taken a lot out of it, and I know there'll be a lot of crew here, mate, even like the way the female space is going. There's so many beautiful parts of this conversation. Before we wrap things up, is there anything that you would like to talk about that you think we missed along your journey, along your story?
No, thanks for having me. This was a fun time. I appreciate you. This
Mate,
is awesome.
thank you for your time. Johnathan, mate, this has been sick. I'm very appreciative of what you're doing in the community, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next couple of years look like. And, mate, I'm keen to come back and see you in action in the community, brother. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you. I got to come visit you next time, though, man.
We're on, brother. We're on. Thank you,
Thanks,
brother. I
bro.
appreciate that,
you,
man.